Crandall. I'm a co-founder at Moody Ales. This is Evan Singer from P49. We have a two-part presentation today. I'm going to be chatting about brewery management tools, and Evan's going to be digging into how they do their production planning at P49. Just so you know why I was asked to come up here. Before opening the brewery, I spent 15 years in IT as a consultant, software developer, systems analyst, doing planning projects and stuff like that. So this is why I get to be in charge of IT at Moody Ales, among other things. But we're going to get started. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through a bunch of these slides. If you have questions, throw your hands up. I don't know about Evan, but afterwards I'll go hang out in the conference room. You guys can come ask me questions if you have to, or if you want to, or if you have to. And also my email, you can email me anytime. So, okay, so the first thing I kind of want to stress upon is whenever you're going to put in a piece of software or tools to manage things in any business, really, you're kind of wondering why you're doing it, right? So for all of these systems is about getting data out for your employees and the different groups in the organization. The more data you have access to, the more data everyone in all the teams have access to, and the easier it is for them to get at it, manipulate it, and report on it, the more valuable all the work you're going to have to put into implementing one of these systems is going to be. If it's not usable and the data is hard to get at, there's no point in doing any of the work to put the system in, because it is going to be a lot of work. So for us, like as brewers, we want people to be able to kind of look at something really quickly, especially the folks in the brewery while they're maybe they just have a laptop or something, they're carting around the brewery, or they have their phone. They need to be able to at a glance kind of see how things are going. We need reports for management, sales data, things like that, and then getting the data into the accounting system in the books. It needs to be easy. It needs to be accurate for the bookkeepers and the accountants. So we're going to talk about at a really high level a lot of these processes and systems. So you got accounting software. We'll cover a bit of point of sale options, finished goods inventory tracking, brew data tracking. Evan's going to go over production planning, raw material inventory, keg tracking, order desks, some Doc 60 stuff, excise reporting, CRM, and kind of talking about how different options for getting this stuff into your brewery. There's 100 different ways you can do it. So it's going to be a high-level overview. Probably the biggest thing to remember that most folks who haven't implemented software systems in a company is it's not just about the technology, right? Like, technology is a tool. You don't just install it and then it magically does stuff for you. Like, it's a tool we use to get things done. Crap in is crap out. So if you don't spend time to make sure you set up things properly, make sure someone is a champion for the software and the project, that they're going to spend time, that person needs to be someone who has good relationships in your company with all the different groups, understands kind of how everyone and how all the systems work together outside of the technology, and is willing to kind of try to get everyone on board, because it's tough sometimes to get everyone to be like, yeah, let's implement this piece of software that I have no idea why it's going to be any use for me, right? The other thing is sometimes because we're small, not all of us, but most of us are pretty small, you kind of have to fit the technology a lot of the times. So you're looking at these different software packages and options. They won't always do exactly what you want the way you currently do it. But unless you have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to build custom software, you kind of have to bend to them. And it's important to remember that. Someone's going to be in charge of implementing change at your brewery. It's called change management. It's probably the most important part of implementing a piece of software systems in an organization, and it's the first thing everyone ignores. So if it's you, good luck. It'll be fun in the end. Everyone's going to think you're a hero, but that kind of anywhere from 3 to 12 months or longer is going to be painful. Okay, so let's talk about kind of an overview of the systems. Again, it's going to impact everyone in the organization if you're doing something that's kind of end-to-end. We're talking about basically when grain or hops arrive or even get ordered, at that point in time, all the way to when you're invoicing, and then Doc 60s, excise reporting, things like that, and there's everything in between. So everyone's going to be affected by this. This is kind of a quick overview of the different processes that we deal with in breweries. There might be some missing, but there's lots of little pieces. So the first one we're going to look at is lounge sales. So most of us, I think, have lounges or tasting rooms or do off sales, the growler fills. And then we get a lot of questions. I get a lot of emails, and we also get questions on the Facebook page kind of all the time about like what point of sale are people using. So the first three options here are iPad based, and the last one is so the three that I kind of see most often. At Moody Ales, we use Square. I think a lot of the breweries here use Square. It's free as long as you're not using their credit card processing, which you don't have to use Square. It's got a ton of reports. You can have as many iPads as you want, as many locations as you want. They all talk to each other. You get reporting for your lounge managers and whatnot on the sales, and everything is all web-based. It's really easy to get at. Touch Bistro, very similar, more features, but you're looking at about $500 per license per iPad. If the feature set is worth it for you, then it's definitely one to look at. If you need more than one point of sale that they all talk to each other, it starts to get a bit expensive. You need a server, and you're looking at another $500 per license as well. So another one that's come up is Revel. I don't have much experience with it. It's a bit more money, but it also has some pretty nice features. Something to check out. And then if, like P49, they use Micros now that they've got the restaurant there. So it's obviously built, like it's custom software and hardware. It's built for the restaurant industry. It's going to work really well, but it's expensive, right? So some different options there. One thing I would recommend is to keep your wholesale sales separate from your lounge. Like try not to run your wholesale invoices through your lounge point of sale. If at all possible, it'll make your accountant a lot happier. Accounting software, so like everything that you guys do, if you're brewers, like everything you're doing there, you're using ingredients, you're creating a finished product, it's got to end up, those numbers got to end up in the accounting system at some point. So there's a couple of options as far as where you install that. So there's cloud-based systems, which means they're on someone else's server. You just access them through a website. Or there's like on-premise solutions where you have to have some servers installed or a computer installed in your brewery to use them. And so then within that, you have these integrated and non-integrated. So something like orchestrated beer. Have anyone heard of orchestrated beer? Okay, it's a brewery management package that's built like by SAP, and it's built on an accounting system. So you can't separate those two things; they're one and the same. Whereas a system like what we use, our accounting system is still integrated, but we have to make them talk to each other. So they're just not from the same company. So we use QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Desktop is another option. There's also Zero Accounting, Accounting Edge, Zoho Books, and you can use spreadsheets if you want. I mean, really, you could use paper and pen, but I wouldn't recommend it. It is an option. Okay, CRM we're going to blow through real quick. So big thing with this is you're going to get out what you put in. So if your sales folks don't like using the CRM because it's hard to use or the phone app sucks, or they just don't understand the benefit they're going to get out of it, it's not going to get used. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on it, how long you take to implement it. If they don't use it, you get zero benefit. So I guess my big thing there is involve them in the decision. If you have an existing team, like get them involved in choosing that system, make sure they're on board so that when you start using it, they have some buy-in, right? So a few options for CRM. You've got, so we use Eco's Brewmaster for our brewery management system. It has a very, very, very basic CRM in it. We actually don't use the CRM in it, but you could. Zoho is another one, and actually David's here somewhere. Yeah, David's here. He's got some customizations. David spent some time in the alcohol sales industry as well as some IT, so if you're interested in Zoho, it's a valid option, and he's got some things that make it easier to use. Base, I think the boys at Steel and Oak use Base, and Jordan seems to really like that. These are all online as well and have apps and whatnot. Last one would be, Salesforce. Everyone's heard of Salesforce. You can use it. It's quite expensive, really, but it is an option if you've got someone at the brewery that already knows it and is really kind of championing it. You could also build, like for smaller organizations, you could build a custom customer relationship management tool out of spreadsheets. Benefits there is free, like the software is usually free, Google Sheets or something like that. But only one person could really, like if you change the view and I'm also online, I'm going to just see what you just changed to. So like only one person can be in it at a time. It's kind of limiting. We actually use an app called Airtable, which Mike from Yellow Dog introduced us to, just as a way to build custom little databases. And it works really well for the size of CRM that we're using. Not as full featured, and someone with some technical knowledge needs to be around to like build it, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, Mike figured it out, so probably not that hard. Sorry, Mike. And then spreadsheets, like you could run the whole brewery on spreadsheets, and I think a lot of us do. And if you've got the skills in house, and you can, especially if you got someone who can write some scripting, like Visual Basic for applications, you can do a lot in spreadsheets. But you need those skills in house because they do break quite often, and they need to be fixed right away if they're running your business, right? So you need someone in house that can deal with that if needed. Total valid option, especially for smaller organizations. You also get it built the way you want it, which is a huge benefit, right? So, okay, so what we really want to talk about, though, is these brewery management packages. So the leaders that we've seen, I saw kind of doing my research in BC, orchestrated beer. So this is what most of the larger craft breweries in BC are using. They got a cloud version, they've got an on-premise version. Very full featured. It's built by SAP, or owned and built by SAP now, which is one of the largest software companies in the world. These guys, they do ERP and management planning systems. It's all they do, and accounting systems for large manufacturers. They're not the greatest at user interface design, probably valid to say, but the stuff works. It's a much higher cost than some of the other options. The implementation project is going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to completely replace your accounting system, but it's a total valid option. So like you can see from the list of folks that are using it, Steamworks, Red Truck, Driftwood, I think Phillips uses it as well. There's probably some others. Like that's kind of the size where it makes sense because you're talking like $10,000 to $100,000 in implementation probably. So to get it set up, and licensing is quite expensive as well. Ecos Brewmaster is probably this one that is most used in BC by the smaller craft breweries. We use it. It's a US-based company. They do understand Canada, and they've done some work to help us out up here. They have a large team. They had a big influx of cash this year, doubled their development team, and so they're not going anywhere. 1 in 6 breweries in the US use Ecos Brewmaster, which is kind of cool. They understand QuickBooks Online for Canada, which is a little bit different than the US version. The taxes, there's a Doc60 export from it for the LDB. Excise, we get the data out of it we need in the right format for excise reporting as well. So you can integrate it with QuickBooks online or desktop. And I believe there's one other software package or accounting package as well. And it's pretty granular. Like you could turn on just invoice syncing or just bill syncing or none of it or all of it. Unlimited users and support. They really want people to be able to call and not worry about like a fee to ask a question. And they want all your folks to be able to have their own account so you can see who did what, because it all tracks everything by user. Your cost is based on annual production, and when you go over you go to the next level, you get a very friendly email saying, "Congratulations, we're now going to bill you more." Which is nice, so you don't even have to think about it. The breweries I know that use this locally: Moody Ales, Powell Street, Steel and Oak, Four Winds, Fuggles and Warlock. Anyone else using Ecos? Lots. Bridge. Yeah. Okay. Lots. Probably all to varying success, I'm guessing. So we're gonna talk mostly about Ecos today. So just a quick reminder, like these are the systems and processes that we have in the brewery that we're trying to fit into one of these software packages. So, like I said, there's lots of options on how to do this. So we have lots of tools we can use to do this too. So we've got accounting software, we've got brewery management tools, spreadsheets, manual data entry. Hopefully, is not an option for too many of us. Sticky notes never go away. Tons of sticky notes, and pen and paper is always an option, even if it's not a great one. So this is one view of what you might see a brewery management package look like as far as managing all those processes. This is what beer might look like. You see the blue area is orchestrated beer and everything's in it. So it means it all has to work together. They can customize how that is. Software is always about time and money. If you've got both, you can do anything, right? So, and then their lounge point of sale, you would have some synchronization there into the accounting modules in orchestrated beer potentially. Spreadsheets and sticky notes, you're going to see they never go away. You're always going to have those. So buy stocks in 3M, I guess. So this is what I had a quick chat with a couple of team members over at P49, and this is another option. So they have some custom software for now. So the Blue Area is their custom written software that I think Anthony write that. Yeah. So they have skills. Like they got skills on the team. Anthony is a software developer. He wrote a web app. It does all their invoicing, Doc 60s, customer relationship management is kind of in there. Finished goods inventory tracking and the sales reporting all come out of there. You can see invoicing straddles QuickBooks and the custom app. They have to manually enter all the invoices, like they double enter it. So they enter it into the custom app and then they enter it into QuickBooks later. So there's some inefficiency there, obviously. QuickBooks does all the stuff you would expect it to, and then they have spreadsheets for everything else, and Evan's going to talk about that a bit. And also, if you get Graham drunk, he'll tell you how awesome he is at Excel. and then Evan has to come do a talk because he overcommits. That's an option. So if they didn't have Anthony on the team there, that would probably have cost tens of thousands to do if you're going to implement it, and it wouldn't probably be exactly the way you need it. And then you need someone to constantly maintain and fix bugs and stuff. So it's really not an option for most of us, but if you've got the skills or the money, go for it. Okay, you can do a lot of stuff in QuickBooks. There's a QuickBooks for manufacturing, and it'll do finished goods inventory tracking, raw material tracking, invoicing, everything. It's not in the cloud, but you can also get a lot of what you would need for that in the cloud version as well, like the QuickBooks Online version. You would still need spreadsheets, and you're going to have some batch. There's obviously it doesn't understand what a batch of beer is, so you can't track like all the information you want to track on a batch or recipes or anything like that, but it is an option. This is what we do at Moody Ales. We have, so starting from the left there, we've got Square PO point of sale, which is free. We used to use Touch Bistro, by the way, which is really great, but we needed a bunch of iPads and it was going to be too expensive. So, and then we use a little app called Shogo. I'm going to have the last slide, and these are going to go out to you guys. Has links to all of this stuff. So if you miss something, don't worry too much about it. So Shogo is a little app in the web, in the cloud, I guess, that synchronizes between a bunch of different point of sale systems and a bunch of different accounting systems. You just link them together, and every night your sales from your point of sale go into QuickBooks, and then your accountant or your bookkeeper just can finish the end of day. It's already in there, so it saves a ton of time and eliminates a lot of data entry, manual data entry. QuickBooks, we have profit and loss, balance sheet, all the financial reports. And then we have Ecos. So Ecos does all our purchase orders all the way to invoicing and deliveries, everything in between. It also does all the batch tracking. It understands recipes and ingredients, and you can see finished goods inventory, you can see raw material inventory, and it synchronizes with QuickBooks Online. So it synchronizes your invoices, your bills, like a purchase order becomes a bill, bunch of journal entries to keep your balance sheet up to date, things like that. And then we do a lot of sales reporting in Ecos, and it has some custom reporting that we're going to look at, and then spreadsheets. I mentioned the CRM, and then the sticky notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the grain. Okay, so we're going to start at the beginning. We're really quickly going to brew some beer in Ecos, and I'm not doing this live because it would break if I did that. But so you're going to see some screenshots. So. These are the colored parts of the pieces we're going to use to get grain into the system and then make beer. So Ecos, and then there's like the modules in between there, within those. And it's also going to hit QuickBooks. Everything. One of the cool things and also scary things about Ecos is like when you move something, if you do something in inventory as a brewer or packaging, it touches your accounting system. So, which is good, but you need to understand it, right? So that you understand what your kind of the consequences of your actions. So this is the home screen of Ecos. These little red bubbles on the dots there are like the one in the kind of middle far left is your inventory. It's saying, hey, there's something you got to look at. And you click on it. It's like you need to order these things. You can set reorder levels, and you can set them to whatever you want. So hopefully you set it so like it's maybe 2 days further out than when you actually like the lead time for that ingredient. This is gone. We don't often run around looking for bags of grain last minute, although it does happen sometimes. But that's a big thing. This is the brewery view, so you get you can customize this too. So It's a visual view of your brewery. So these are all our tanks. All the beers in there are color coded, so you can quickly look at this, see how much beer is in the tank, what beer is in what tank. And this is all drag and drop too. It's pretty cool. You just, like, if you're going to package out of a bright tank, you drag the bright tank into the cold room, and it knows you're going to package something. It says, what do you want to package? So you can customize this for your brewery. You can have as many sites and buildings as you want. It's unlimited. They have to build it. You just tell them what you want, and they can usually turn around changes in a day. So this is a purchase order. So like, we're going to order some grain from Country Malt. So we would go in and create a new purchase order. It auto-generates a number based on whatever format you want. You tell it what supplier. It stores that stuff in there. It knows the addresses and whatnot. And then it also knows about all your ingredients. So you just say, I want to order like some 2-row or whatever it is, how much you want. And you add it all to this. So you click save, and now you got this purchase order. You can email it to your supplier right from there, or you can call them. Like, I think we usually just call them and say, this is what we need. And then if they're out of something, we might quickly update the purchase order because you want it to match what you're hopefully going to receive. So now you've got this purchase order, and you're waiting for the grain to arrive or whatever it is you ordered. When it arrives, you need to get it into inventory. So you're going to create what's called an inventory receipt. And this is literally, you go into the purchase order, you say add inventory receipt. It pre-populates it with all the stuff that was on your purchase order. If there's anything you haven't received yet, for some reason it's backordered, you just remove it from the inventory receipt, and it'll leave that PO open until everything's received. And at this point, you can put pricing and stuff in if you want, but our brewers will just receive it, they count, they double check, they confirm the quantities, they add the inventory in, so without the pricing, and they post it to inventory, and now the grain is available to be used, the hops are available to use in the brewing process. And then you've got this piece of paper that you sign, like the packing slip when you get stuff that most people just throw in the garbage, or they don't even pull it out of so you take that, you stick it somewhere for somebody else to go in later and know that, okay, there's this bill that's going to come, or there should be a bill that we're expecting that we need to pay. And that's where all the pricing is going to come from. So now we've received the grain. This is a snapshot of part of our raw materials inventory. These lists in Ecos you can just start typing, and it just filters right away. It's all live. It's pretty cool. But then you'd be able to see that grain in inventory, how much you have, what warehouse it's in, what location it's in, depending how granular you want to be. And then in QuickBooks, remember I said this all synchronizes. So every 3 hours, Ecos and QuickBooks synchronize. Okay. And so that inventory receipt actually turns, so someone in our office would then take that and they'd add the pricing in, they say bill received, and within 3 hours there's going to be a bill in QuickBooks. So are there any bookkeepers, accountants, or anyone in here? One. So he's loving this. So this thing goes in there, I'm talking to you, this thing goes in there, and then they know what to pay, right? And the cool thing is, like, all those prices, they actually give us a lot of information. So like, you can imagine, like, Ecos now, like, when we have a recipe that knows how much grain down to the gram goes in, how much hops and all that, and it tell you what your cost per liter is on that batch. And you don't even have to do any math. And then what happens is when you have that bill goes into Ecos, if you have the journal entries turned on, your balance sheet, like what tells people how much money and how many assets and dollars you have in your company, your balance sheet, the ingredients account is incremented. So now you have that grain in inventory sitting at the brewery, and it's an asset, right? So accountants like this, right? Yeah. Okay. Good. I made the slides on. They're useful. Okay, so we're gonna make some beer quick. So you would say you click on the mash tun on that spreadsheet, on the visual kind of outline of the brewery. And you say add batch, you choose the site. So if you have more than one brew house, which we do, we have our pilot system is also in there. But so you can have as many brew houses and brew systems as you want. You choose a recipe, so it understands recipes. So for a brown ale, we have multiple recipes depending on the size of the brew. And they're based on a turn. So it's still a 20 barrel recipe, but the system knows if you're brewing 40 barrels, we're going to do 2 turns. And it adds those in. You'll see that in a minute. And then you might say, well, we're pretty sure it's going to go into this fermenter, and it'll end up in this bright tank. And that's useful for if you're using the batch planning process that's in Ecos. We don't, and I can tell you why in person if you like, but it just doesn't give us enough granularity, but it is useful. And then you've got the batch, you've brewed the beer, you put it in the fermenter, and this is all drag and drop in the system. And now you've got this batch screen. So there's a bunch of information. So you can see I mentioned the turns. So bottom left, you'll see all the turns. Let's say your first turn, you got a little extra volume or you're a bit light on your gravity. The next turn, you can go in and you can edit the recipe just for that turn. And it keeps track of that. Your inventory will be correct, your costs will be correct, everything will be correct, and that stays forever, right? Fermentation logs, you can track every time you're taking a log from your tank daily or however you're doing it, you can track that. Conditioning info, packaging plans you can put in, and then also viewing what you package, and then your cost per liter as well once all those prices are in. And if you add the prices after you brew the beer, it's okay. It just updates it. It fixes it after. It's really cool. And then, so we brewed the beer. So all the ingredients dollars that we had, they moved to work in progress. So I know how much money is sitting in tanks on my brew house floor, right? So again, accountants like that. Okay, so then packaging plans. So you're going to package the beer. So we brewed the beer. We PO, ordered, received, brewed, and now we're going to package it. So you go in and do a packaging plan if you like. You don't have to, but you can. And you start putting in what you plan to package at the bottom there. And at the top, it's showing you like the percentage of the brew that those things are going to be. And at the very end, it just shows what's left. So we know, like I know there's a 150 liter loss from our standpipe on the 60 barrel bright tank. So we just leave about 150 liters at the end that we don't do. And this is an estimate, right? It gives the brew team from whoever's doing the planning, like they know what they need to package. So, and so packaging, so you would drag the bright tank to your cold room, like on that little visual thing, or you can click on that, or you can click add packaging. I like to drag, I don't know what. I don't know why. So if this is just packaged product, you just type a number of however many of those things you're packaging. If you're doing kegs and you're using the optional keg tracking module, so you have IDs and a barcode scanner, you just scan the kegs. So we usually have a pallet like 9 kegs on it. We just scan the kegs, it increments the number, and those kegs are 50 liter kegs. You just click save and you're ready to go. And now those kegs in the system, when I go to the report, say you've got Hardy Brown as batch 401, it was packaged on this date, and that follows like when it goes to the customer, when it comes back, so you can see the history. So if you ever had to track down all the kegs from batch 401 for some reason, you could do that, right? So now it's in kegs, it's in inventory. So this is you go into your inventory, I type Hardy Brown, and it says this is how many we have. We have a Hardy apocalypse right now. We have 1 keg. That was an actual inventory on Monday. And so when you click into that, so you click into the 50 liter brown on the view on the left, you're going to see where all those kegs are at all your different warehouses. I can explain to you guys why we have so many if you have questions about that. But like if we have kegs at Direct Tap or on the island and things, it'll all be in here. So you can see where all those kegs are. And then if you click into one of those warehouses, you'll see the ins and outs. Like it's all transactional based. You say, okay, what keg went because of this invoice? We added 15 from packaging. It was Steven who did it, right? So if something looks weird, you can go track that person down. That's why you want everyone to have their own account. So now we've got the stuff in inventory. One thing to note, like when we package that beer, every packaging item, so every keg, every case of beer, you have production components that you can set up. So this at the bottom here, this is what makes up a keg of our brown ales. 50 liters of brown, a keg shell, a keg collar, and a keg cap. So it takes all that stuff out of inventory and moves the stuff on the balance sheet from packaging and beer in progress. And now we know how many dollars in kegs we have sitting in the warehouse, right? So another handy thing. So it kind of moves it along there. Every 3 hours does its synchronization. Again, if you haven't got the prices in, you receive something you didn't. Later on, it'll just go and it'll put the journal entries in and update them. Okay, so everyone following? Not too fast. So we made beer. It's in a keg, 1 keg. So we want to get paid, and we get invoiced. So this part of the process, getting the beer to the customer and getting paid, is going to involve QuickBooks, some different modules in Ecos, the keg tracking, finished goods inventory, delivery. There's a delivery module and some invoicing, and for sure stickies because they're all over the invoices usually. So when you go to create an invoice, what you do, the invoice number is auto-generated based on a format that you choose. It can be anything, and then you just choose the customer if it's existing, or you click add new, and the customer will have all this information that you see here, like every field that's filled out, that's auto-populated based on the customer that we already created. So you set it up once. their license number, the LIC, what type of like customer they are, whether the delivery, pickup, whatever it is, and you don't have to change it. You can though, so you can override all those things on an invoice by invoice basis. You'll see there's a site. It's like the fourth one down on the left. So like if we search, we usually ship to the Burrard because they're a block away. We just ship it out of the brewery. But let's say I only had kegs of brown at Direct Tap and I really need to get it there. I would just change the site to Direct Tap Vancouver, and now inventory would get pulled out of there instead of out of the brewery. So. Okay, so then you got this invoice, you got to add items to it. So they added this like a year ago, and creating invoices is actually really easy. All the green stuff is what we have in stock at the site that the customer's tied to, not overall. All the red is out of stock, so right away you get a visual cue. Do we have this or not? So you click, you add the item, and when you do this, you can choose whether there's taxes, like if you're going to change prices or whatever. No one would ever do that, but discounts, whatever you're doing, you can do all that in here. So it's very flexible. And then the invoice gets synchronized to QuickBooks as we expect. And for us, we have Steven does our wholesale order desk management. So he receives the payments in QuickBooks. So Ecos doesn't know about credit cards or checks, or you can't receive a payment in it. But when you receive the payment in QuickBooks, the balance owed by that customer gets synchronized over to QuickBooks. So you can always see like how much your customer is currently outstanding in QuickBooks. This works pretty well, and some people get worried, well, I got to give my employees access to my accounting system. QuickBooks Online, you just say they get access to customers and invoicing, and that's it, and it's done. So they can create invoices, they can see what customers owe you, take payments, and that's it. Okay, so, and then as you imagine, so what will happen at that point, we now actually sold the beer. We'll see sales on our profit and loss. And then the cost of that keg beer moves from the balance sheet to your cost of goods sold, right, to your P&L. And so now we can see we had this much revenue, we had this much cost, so this is our gross margin on those sales, right? So it does that all automatically. It's quite nice. So, okay, so then the next thing is you got to get beer to the customer. Question? No? Okay, you got to get beer to the customer. So there's a delivery module, which we use. It's actually pretty handy. So you can set up, so when you first go in, you'll see all the unassigned deliveries that haven't been assigned to a day or a truck. But Ecos has this, like, it knows you can create as many deliveries as you want on a day for as many trucks as you want. You can assign each one to a different truck, and you can assign invoices to all those different deliveries. So we have one truck, so we set up a delivery for each day of the week. We know where we're going. They just start putting the invoices in as they create them, or once in the morning, to the appropriate days. And what happens is, if you go look at the deliveries, you can see like it gives you the load weight. Like you can put all the weights of your products in the system. So it'll tell you, it calculates how much you're going to have on the truck if you're worried about overloading the truck. It gives you a dollar value to count. So I took this like early Monday morning. So it's like, just gives you an idea of like what's already kind of done. And then you can assign invoices to the delivery. So and from in this screen, you can actually see them all, but you can also print a pick list. So we used to print out all the invoices from QuickBooks, and then like someone would go through them and like write down what we needed. We've all done this, right? And then at the end, you're like double check it, and the count's different. Then you check it again, the count's different again, and you're like, well, fuck. I'm just gonna put extra beer on the truck. You don't have to do that anymore. We still put some extra beer on the truck just in case, but you go around a corner too fast or something, and. But yeah, so it gives you a pick list, and they can also just, like, we pre-print out the Doc 60s, but because there's some just part of our process, but your driver or the warehouse folks or whoever can print the Doc 60s from here too. And it's one click and they all print out for that delivery. So this is like it's a little thing, but it actually adds a lot of organization. So you would do this and your drivers go out. If you're doing the keg tracking, when they drop it off, they can scan the keg if they have like a data plan and an iPad and that kind of stuff in the truck. We haven't had time to implement that yet, so we just rewrite the keg IDs on the invoice next to the beer, and then when the invoice comes back and is going to get filed, Steven just quickly goes in and you can manually type the keg IDs in. You don't have to scan them; they're just letters and numbers. And so we do that, and then it's all tracked. So there's a risk of data entry error. But one of the cool things is if you type in the wrong ID, it'll say, oh, that's not brown. You got IPA in that keg. You're like, oh, wait, what happened? Right? So it's like you can catch those errors usually pretty quick. We have a set delivery day for different regions. So you would set this up however, like it's really quite configurable. You can set up whatever works for you. So, and this is the keg tracking module. So this is an optional module. They charge you by how many kegs you have. I think it starts at like $100 or $200. And then you kind of at a glance, you can see how many kegs you have, where they are, what's in them. You can search by keg ID. You can search by product. You can search by batch or customer or location. So it's pretty cool. Like we've all been keg hunting, right? Like you're like, fuck, where are my kegs? And so you can just print this out. You can filter, like show me all the kegs that we haven't seen in 30 days that are at a customer site or something like that. And you hand it to someone. They can go they actually can go find places where a keg might be instead of just hoping it's there when they get there. Yeah, so now we've brewed beer and we ordered stuff, we brewed beer, we invoiced for it, got paid, delivered the beer. So like all this data, like every time you touch something, it's created a data point, which is, I love data. So the Ecos has some custom reporting. So we use spreadsheets and we use QuickBooks a bit. Like obviously your financial statements are going to be in QuickBooks, so your profit and loss and your balance sheet and things like that. But the biggest thing is probably the sales reporting and also like batch data and production data. And things like accounts receivable still come out of QuickBooks. We actually set up like just once a week on like Thursday, I think, our order desk gets an email with all the outstanding AR. It just lists them all so they know they can go track stuff down, right? So you can automate a lot of these things with these tools pretty simply. So out of the box, Ecos has like 80 reports, I think. Some of them are kind of US specific. One thing I will say, when you set this up, be very clear with them that you want it in barrels or kilograms or liters or whatever, and double check it all on all the batches, like all the recipes before you move forward. It's hard to change it after for some things. It's not the end of the world. They're getting better at translating, like doing the math on reports and translating things, but just something to think about. But out of the box, about 80 reports. And they added, 6 months ago, you can create custom reports. So any field that's in the system, you can create reports on it. And I usually just start with something that's close. You click copy, change the name, and start dragging. It's all drag and drop. You can do summaries and averages and pivots and all sorts of cool stuff. If you like data, there's all sorts of cool stuff in there. And it's actually really good. You need someone with a little bit of knowledge, like how data structures work, or you just need time. Like you just spend some time in the tool and play around with it. But there's some pretty powerful information you can get out of it. So it's all security based. So you can say, I'm going to create this report, but I only want these groups within Ecos to be able to see it, or I only want these users to be able to see it, which is nice. We have everyone's a manager in Ecos for us. It's just easier. Like we don't really hide anything. So you have unlimited reports, and they look great. They're real time, and you can also create these like dashboard reports. So there's like a special category of reports. You save it to the dashboard category, and you get stuff that looks like this. You can customize these. You can create whatever you want. You can change the way they look. You can make part charts, graphs, and you can do it. Like there's tons of things. It's all drag and drop. So you create the report. What I did is I want to track things for our fiscal year. So I went in and copied a bunch of the out of the box reports, changed the date range to be our fiscal year, and then added them to this dashboard so I can go in at any time and see what our sales are year to date, month to date, week to date, broken down by product, by sales rep, like whatever you want, right? These numbers for us don't include our tasting room, so I can add another report if I want to see what we're transferring to our tasting room, because that's all tracked within Ecos as well. It's really, really quite powerful and totally customizable. So that's the other half of our dashboard. So, okay, LDB and excise reporting, everyone's favorite thing. Just like really quickly, just know Ecos it understands what the direct sales web reporting portal is. Who gets to do the Doc 60s? Yay. So the only time I log in there is once a week to upload a CSV file and then add the batch. That's it. I don't have to use it. You click add report, or add document. You gotta type in the invoice number and it goes in, it checks to make sure you don't have that one already, and you type in the license. It's slow and it's a pain in the ass. So at the end of the week, you just click, there's a place for you to export a CSV on a date range, and you download it, and that's it. You might have to do some minor manipulating. Maybe there wasn't a SKU set up on that product properly, and you have to go and add it or something, but it's really quite easy. And then you just upload it. You have to get the LDB to turn on the upload feature on your DSWR account, and they're going to ask for sample CSV, which you just download from Ecos, and you're ready to go. So that'll save a ton of time. If anyone here is entering Doc60s and then also entering those invoices somewhere else, like this alone will save you a lot of time. Excise, the excise reports are built for the US, but they do give us the data we need. They give you, you can set it up to say, I want the excise report to spit out data based on packaged product added for the month. And it's this big long report. It'll show you every invoice that you created that month and everything, but there's this one section that gives you the data you need. You just take that number and you pay the government. So, yeah. You still have to post it in QuickBooks. Like, Ecos can't do that for you, and it can't pay it for you or file for you. You still have to do that. And this is literally what we do. Turn beer into tax revenue or water. So there's some other stuff here. I'm not going to go over it, but there's a bunch of other tools I put in here. And there's a bunch of slides I didn't go over that will be in the PDF. I just didn't have time. And all the links you're going to have is there as well. So any questions quickly? We are going to have probably 10 minutes to the end, but yeah.
I saw that you had a little portal there that had all the warehouses that were direct tap.
Yeah.
And I know that they have a similar portal.
Yeah.
Do you update both portals individually?
Yeah, our system always matches direct tap, and we actually have a warehouse called Pending Transfers Island, Pending Transfers Vancouver. So if it's on its way, it moves from our inventory into pending, and when they receive it, it moves from pending to their warehouse, so that it's always accurate and we know where stuff is. It's otherwise impossible to reconcile. So.
Yeah.
Do you know if Orchestrated Beer now integrates with Canadian taxes? Because when we looked at it, it was just U.S. based. So it was missing that.
Julia, you know? Canadian taxes, does Orchestrated Beer understand Canadian taxes now? Do you know?
I think so.
Maybe. I don't know, but yeah.
We've been looking at ERP selection, and I believe they do. I know a couple of the other ones said they would need to build it out, but basically they're not going to charge for that. It is time on their end, but then they can reuse that for any other Canadian customer. So,
You guys, yeah, Vern.
Two quick questions. When you're doing your orders in Ecos, does Ecos talk to Direct Tap, or do you have to again have somebody?
We do have to, yeah. So you have to double enter your stuff into the Direct Tap system, which is fine. I mean, it's the only place we double enter.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Other question around excise. So it spits out the numbers you need. So it does your daily production and runs that down, and you don't have to go in.
No, it doesn't do the rounding. You got to do your own rounding if you want to, and that's kind of up to you. Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, batch quality info, can you tag it to the batch?
Yes, it's all tagged to a batch. You enter it on the batch screen. It's all tied to that batch. Yeah.
Is it granular enough that you can add like different wage rates for different brewers brewing as like an ingredient in each batch?
You could. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
but
if you for like a bit to add more than just like the raw ingredients.
Yeah, I mean, you could use it that way, but then I would be worried about what's synchronizing to QuickBooks, because there's probably a way to do that. I haven't done that. I probably wouldn't do it in Ecos, but you probably could figure out a way to do it. Yeah. Okay, Evan, ready? I'll hide over in the hall after if you guys have any more questions. And you can email me at any time. I'm happy to answer questions. So.
Oh boy, this is gonna be awkward. Shima, yeah, my Shima's on the wrong side here. No, well, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna take out my laptop here. Anthony's gonna have to buy me a new one. Okay, I do have a PowerPoint, but I'm going to be working mostly in Excel because that's our tool. So my name is Evan. I'm the production manager at Parallel 49. I'm fairly new to the craft brewing industry. Brewing industry in general. I started actually with Molson in Toronto about 4 years ago. Moved out here right around 3 years ago. left Molson about a year and a half ago for Parallel 49. I see another couple refugees, call it, from Molson. Hi guys. So my role is mostly focused on the packaging side. I manage the packaging staff, and I do basically the end-to-end production planning for the brewery. So from the brew schedule through to packaging manpower, packaging materials, and that sort of thing. The only thing I don't manage that I won't talk about is brewing materials, but the tool I use for packaging materials could be used for brewing fairly easily. So just going to talk about some of the goals of production planning, why you're doing it in the first place, what you need to be able to do production planning, at least in the level that I do it. And then I'll go over my process, deep dive into some of the tools and spreadsheets I use. I'll talk about my material planning process, which ties right into production planning for me. And then just some of the challenges I have. I think if Adam's presentation was here's how to use an ERP, mine is here's why not to use spreadsheets, but if you need to, here's how to do it. So the goals of production planning are going to vary, based on your brewery, and it's all about what are your biggest challenges. For us, tank space is our biggest challenge, and that really dictates how far out I need to plan, because I need to, tank space and shelf life of your product are really the two things you need to balance. So, how much are you going to stock up based on how much you're going to be able to brew week to week. Our lead times on packaging materials, again, if I have a material that I know, I have a 2-month lead time on, I need to have my production planned out at least 2 months ahead of time so I don't stock out of that. Otherwise, you're dealing with minimums minimum stock levels that may or may not be accurate. It forces you to carry a lot more inventory than you would otherwise. What's your manpower like? And that ties right into equipment availability. So when I'm planning production, I'll show you one of an example here. I can't pack 20 bottling tanks in a week, but so how do I balance out my bottling, my canning, my kegging to make sure that I'm not exceeding my manpower or my equipment capacity in a week, and then just making sure that we don't stock out. So I think nobody wants to stock out. It's lost sales, it's lost revenue, it's going to affect your reputation with customers, and that's really probably the number one goal I think of anybody's production planning. So the first thing you need to look at is how are you going to plan? How do you want to plan? Do you want to carry a minimum stock level in your warehouse? Do you want to base it on forecasted sales or on actual sales? For me, I go purely based on forecasted demand, as well as how long does it take from brew to pack date. And then in addition, I need to know what my capacity is in terms of how many brews can I brew per week, and how much can I package per week. So just on a high level, the very start of my process is inventory. We do have an inventory app. That being said, it's all manual entry. It does not tie into. We don't have a production planning system. It doesn't tie into our invoicing system. So there's a manual entry that has to go into this system every time we make beer and every time it moves out of the warehouse. I don't trust it. I don't trust any system that requires that much manual entry. And, I think my lack of trust is well placed when I go do an inventory count and it does not match up with the inventory system. If, items that don't move very much, so there's, 1 or 2 transactions a week will be right on. But for our high moving products, it's more of a ballpark than an exact count. So I'll go and I'll count how many kegs we have in the warehouse, how many skids of pack we have in the warehouse of each product. I also want to see how much beer we have in tank. We have a master production schedule that should show what's in tank. We also have a whiteboard in the cellar that shows what's in tank, and I reconcile the two just to make sure what I think is in tank is actually in tank. The next thing I need is a sales forecast. So now that I know how much we have, I need to know how much we're going to sell. And your source of information is really key here. We do have a sales app there, but it's not really designed to forecast production. So I'm getting data from different places, from reports from the LDB, and a lot from our sales manager. And it's really just making sure that I sit down with him and get an accurate and updated sales forecast. Ideally every week. Usually it ends up being every couple weeks, call it. We've had occasions where the two of us have not sat down for a couple weeks. Things change and we're in trouble. And we're either overproducing, underproducing. If you don't have an accurate sales forecast, you cannot plan based on forecasted demand. Once I have the sales forecast, I'll plan out all the packaging runs for the next up to 8 or 9 weeks. It may seem like it's going out pretty far, but Graham wants to get a 4-week brewing schedule from me. We have beers that are, 4 to 5 weeks in our lager. So if I want to know how much lager to brew 4 weeks from now, I need to know how much I need to package 9 weeks from now. So it's pretty simple math there. It changes. It absolutely changes, and I do the same planning every week. It's a lot of wasted time. It's a lot of rework, doing the same work I did last Friday, this Friday. But it has to happen if I want to make sure it stays accurate. And then once I have all what I want to pack, I'll go and I'll look at each week and I'll see how many bottling runs, canning runs, kegging runs we have that week, and just verify we haven't exceeded our capacity for that week. If we have exceeded our capacity, then I don't necessarily have to start over from the top, but I'll move packaging runs around, and that drives where we're going to brew the beer. I might have to brew something a week early. I might have to run pretty close to stocking out and run it the next week. After I've done all that, I have to translate it into our schedule. So I have one spreadsheet where I do all my planning. I have another Excel spreadsheet where I do my weekly packaging schedule. From that, I translate into our master production schedule, into our manpower schedule, and into my material planning. So it is a lot of manual from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet to another spreadsheet. If I took the time and if I had more skills in Excel, I could probably automate some of this. But for now, I do it manually. So here's my planning tool, and I'm actually going to pull it up in Excel because that'll be a little easier to see. So here's what I start with. All of our beers. Oh, is that not? Oh, thanks. I think I just need to end the slideshow here. Can everybody see that? You want me to blow it up? Blow it up. Okay, I'll blow it up. So this is what I start with each week. So this is the week coming up. I haven't done my planning yet. I'm here talking to you guys, so it's going to be a late night for me tonight. This process takes me the better part of a day, if not, usually a Friday is late for me, and it's, not complaining about it. It's more to show you if we had an ERP or a production planning system, there's a lot of time savings there. But because I'm doing my replanning every week, it is a long process. So the first thing I'll do is get our current inventory. So I'll wait until deliveries have gone out for that day, and I'll take account of everything that's in the warehouse. I'll print off this sheet, and I'll just go to the warehouse, pen and paper, and count everything. Anthony's actually built a report that pulls from the LDB. So daily we get a count of what is currently in the LDB warehouse. So I'll put that in here. We warehouse beer in Alberta, and Valhalla is our co-packer. So we do all our mix packs are done there. We warehouse beer there. So I need to know what is in each of our warehouses. We do distribute through direct tap, but the volume there isn't large enough that I take that into account. I just assume that once it's left our warehouse, it's gone. So once I've filled all that in, I'll go and look at the sales numbers. So I'll sit down with our sales manager and I'll go through how many individual kegs of each brand in each size, how many skids a pack, different pack sizes. So for lager, we sell a 6-pack can that's a spec item. We sell a 12-pack can that's listed. We also have our mix pack, and we have unparalleled. So it's how much of each of these do we currently have, how much is going to move, and that drives what I need to pack each week. So I can't do any of this planned pack until I have my inventory in, because it just doesn't, the numbers don't make sense, right? You see, well, we're 3 skids over on the 6-pack can, and I'm not planning any. This is all carried over from the previous week. So what I do with a finished one, and I'll pull that up. So here's from 2 weeks ago, all of our inventory here, and then my planned pack for the coming week, for the next week, and then this is that week that's coming up. I drag and drop sales numbers. So I clear out the inventory, and then I drag and drop the sales numbers from week 42 to 41, from 43 to 42, et cetera, and then I drag and drop my planned pack or what I'm planning to brew that week from 42 to 41, 43 to 42, and so on. And this is basically what I end up with at the end. I have all my packaging runs. I can see my inventory here. So the gray columns are all, it's really just a sum of what we have in the warehouse, less what we're selling, plus what we're packing week to week to week. And it's just a matter of playing the game of how do I keep that at a positive number. I want to make sure that I have beer in the warehouse at the end of the week, that we haven't sold more than we're going to have. And that kind of switches, this sum switches a little bit from weeks where we already have the beer brewed to weeks where I know I need to brew the beer. So for weeks that I know I'm going to need to brew the beer, for example here, instead of taking in what I'm packing that week, I'm only looking at what I have in inventory at the beginning of the week. And the reason for that is I don't have to worry about, well, if I pack it later in the week, we're going to stock out earlier in the week. So I want to make sure that I have beer that I can cover that entire week's worth of sales without having to pack in that week specifically. And sometimes I don't have a choice. Sometimes I know it's going to be negative coming into the week. For example, over here, I think I'm going to stock out a lager 12-pack cans before the end of that week. I'll make sure I pack that early in the week, and it's just one of those manual things that I have to take care of. At the bottom here, I've done a sum of how many canning runs, bottling runs, kegging runs I think that's going to be. It's a simple Excel formula. It doesn't really take into account, well, can I do 2 runs in a day? Are they shorter runs? Have I planned out 2 kegging tanks? So I don't, again, I built it, but I still don't really trust it. So I'll pretty much write that out manually, and I'll just pull up some of my chicken scratch here. So every week to week, I'll go through that spreadsheet and I'll count up how many canning runs, bottling runs, kegging runs I think I have. And if I look like I've exceeded our equipment or our manpower, I go back and I do it all over again. I move runs and I plan it all out again. So once I'm happy with all of this, I think I've planned out all my brewing, all my packaging, and we're not going to stock out. I have to go and translate that into a number of different tools. So the first thing I'll do is translate it into my weekly packaging schedule. So if I look at this week here, call it week 43, I have 2 tanks of lager planned to keg. So I'll put those in my kegging runs here. I only have 1 here because I probably made an adjustment from 2 weeks previous. But basically every packaging run here will go into the schedule over here, either in canning, bottling, and kegging. We give all the salespeople access to this side of it because they sometimes, if we're running low on stock, if there's a new product, they want to know the day it's coming out. We encourage them not to pull product off the line, but can't prevent them from doing that sometimes. They're very keen on getting stuff out. But essentially I have to translate each week from here into a different page in this workbook. And again, this only works if I've made sure that I'm not exceeding how much I can package in one day.
Evan, you guys use serving tanks there now, do you not?
We do. That's a good question. So serving tanks, I treat as kegs basically. So I don't necessarily schedule out the filling of the serving tanks. That's more Graham. But this sales forecast for kegs includes everything that we're distributing, everything going to Alberta, everything coming out of the tasting room. So that forecast shouldn't change if we're pulling volume instead of packing those kegs. We're filling a serving tank.
So serving tank's just like 16 kegs or something?
Pretty much, yeah. It's 500 liter serving tank is what's that? 20 kegs or 10 kegs. Yeah. We usually fill them in pairs of 2, so 1,000 liters serving tank is 20 kegs.
Is that a different SKU or?
We use the same SKU. We report them as 50-liter kegs.
Exactly. Yeah. When we're invoicing the restaurant, we treat it as 22 serving tanks is 20 50-liter kegs. Yeah. Okay. So once I've translated everything into our weekly packaging schedule, I'll go back and translate it into our master production schedule. So over here we have all our pack runs for the week. And this isn't as granular as that weekly packaging schedule. The brewers don't need to know how many 50-liter kegs, 30-liter kegs I'm going to put in. All they need to know is what bright tank I want it in. So once I plan my pack run, I'll plan that beer to centrifuge. So this Russian Imperial Stout, centrifuging either last night or today, going in a bright tank 2 from fermenter 37. And here's where I'm packing it. So I know that now 37 is free, and once I package that, bright tank 2 will be free again. And again, just everything over the week goes in here, and then my bright tanks, my fermenter to bright tank centrifuge, and then from there I can plan my brewing. So once I've filled in all of the pack runs, all the centrifuge runs, I can go back and look at brewing. So more chicken scratch. Here's all our tanks. So with this sheet, I fill in everything I think is in bright tank, in fermenter based on that production schedule, that master production schedule. Sometimes things change, so I don't trust it. So I go back and I look at the whiteboard, and I'll just verify that everything that I think is in tank is actually on the whiteboard. You can't really read that, but it's every fermenter and the brand that's in there, the date it was brewed. I also use this to drive which fermenter I'm pulling from. I'll go oldest to newest, obviously, unless there's a reason not to. But I'll pull off my fermenters, and then I'll add in over here how many brews I need each week. And again, that's just driven based on my brewing planning tool here. So if I have eight tanks of lager in fermenter right now, I'm packing 2 in week 41, 2 in week 42, 2 in week 43, and 3 in week 44. I've overplanned. But let's say I have all my 8 that I know I'm going to pack. Everything from 45 on has to get brewed. And again, I'll try based on the beer. Lager's a 4 to 5 week beer, so I'll try to plan that out 5 weeks ahead of time. Filthy Dirty's a 2 to 3 week beer, so I'll try to plan that out 3 weeks ahead of time, and so on. So once I know everything I want to brew, I'll make another schedule in chicken scratch. So right at the bottom of this sheet here, 26, I want to brew all this, 27, 28, 29, and so on. And then from that, I'll go translate that into that left side of the production schedule. So everything that I want to brew, I know which fermenter I have based on where I centrifuged, and I just try not to run out of fermenters. So just going back in here. So that's the production planning side of it. And any questions on that side, the tools I use, how I do it? Okay, so the next thing I do is my material planning. So I'll take that weekly packaging schedule, and I'll use all those pack runs in this lovely packaging inventory spreadsheet. And so in this column, I have all of my pack materials. I'll have at a certain start date, I'll take an inventory, and I'll have that. And then for each run, I'll put it in manually. So I'm going to run 4 skids of Tukes baskets, so on, so on. And these all pull from a recipe sheet. So it's done by a lookup. So I have all my recipes here. So all my materials, all of our beers and the pack sizes, and how much of each material that pack run uses. So for example, to get 341 pack is 4x6 bottles of Gypsy Tears, now Ruby Tears. Haven't updated that in here yet. So each skid of pack uses 0.1584 boxes of caps, 1.5 boxes of carriers, 66 mother boxes. It doesn't use any trays. I use 0.46 skids of empty bottles, 0.52 rolls of labels, and that's pretty much it. If I'm making something that I know is going to get co-packed, I'll actually add it into the inventory at the co-packer, and then I can keep track of that manually as well. So in this spreadsheet, I'll put in every packaging run coming up that I've planned for the next, call it 5-6 weeks. I put in co-pack, what I'm planning to co-pack as well. And really what that's driving is this total here. And so this tells me after I've packed all I'm planning to pack for the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, what is my inventory in the warehouse going to be? If I have something negative here, it means I have to order. And any delivery, I do put in deliveries here kind of as a pack run, and it just goes in manually. So on December 8th, I'm planning on receiving 10,000 fanny pack cases. And the reason I have that in there, if I take this out, I'm getting pretty close to nothing. I'd have negative, or I wouldn't have negative, but it'd be pretty close to where I don't want to stock out of that. So that's why I have that planned to deliver there. And again, it depends on lead time. I can't do it 100% like this for our glass, for example. We're ordering glass from China. Our lead time on that's minimum 6 to 8 weeks. So it's really tough to get that 100%. So we order based on what we think we're going to produce. It's not necessarily what I've planned to produce. But most of my other materials here, I plan to produce. I have negatives here for some of the co-pack products because I've planned out the co-packing before I've planned out the actual production of those materials. So, kind of the why not portion of this. This is 100% dependent on getting an accurate forecast from the sales team. It doesn't work for new products that we're not, we might have a target, but for example, with Trash Panda, we started brewing it, we started putting it out before we really built out any inventory, and we were stocked out right away because we weren't able to accurately forecast how much we were going to start moving those first few weeks. Where are those numbers coming from? Are they coming from actual sales data? Are they coming from, I think it's going to be this. So it's difficult. We don't have all our data in one place. We have easy access to what's moved through the LDB. I don't have easy access to what's moved through our tasting room or a restaurant or what's moved through Alberta. So it just adds a layer of complexity there. If Mike Todd doesn't tell me that we've got an LTO coming up, that goes out the window. So I forecast that we're going to move 4 skids or 5 skids a week of Ruby bottles. The LTO comes and we're going to move 8 or 9 skids a week. We're going to stock out. So there's a lot of communication that has to happen, a lot of manual entry there. Is my inventory accurate? I have to pull inventory manually because we don't have any integration between what we're producing, what we're selling, and what we have. It's all entered into the system manually, so if anything gets missed, it's not going to be accurate. So I pull my my finished goods inventory weekly. I try to pull my packaging inventory bi-weekly. I find with my recipes in there, my pack inventory is pretty close to what I expect it to be. But I still like to get a manual count every 2 weeks. It's very time consuming. I have to gather data from a lot of different places. We get a daily email from LDB. I get a daily email with inventory from Alberta, and then I have to go get an inventory count of the warehouse myself. I have to meet weekly with sales to go over those numbers, and then I need to translate from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet to another spreadsheet. So if we had, some of the ERPs we're looking for, even though the actual planning process is pretty similar, it cuts out a lot of the data gathering, the data entry, and really just the multiple spreadsheets. So that's it for that part of the presentation. Just while I have you all, just a quick plug here. The MBAA. We've recently started up a BC chapter of the Western Canada district of the Master Brewers Association. We had a meeting at Central City last month. The topic was malting. I think it was very successful. We had about 60 participants come out. Some of the feedback we got is that not everyone was aware that it was happening. So the Master Brewers Association is kind of on the other side of it from the guild. The guild's more focused on business and process. The MBA is more of a scientific organization and kind of the tie-in from the science of brewing into the practice of brewing. So the goal here is to provide brewers some technical knowledge and resources and information. So we're going to be trying to organize, 3 to 4 technical sessions over the year. The next one coming up is going to be very focused on dry hopping. We're going to talk about dry hopping techniques, innovative hop products, the science behind dry hopping. Location date are still TBD, but we're targeting mid-January. If you want any info, we just started a Facebook group. It's MBA District Western Canada, BC, or mbac.bc@gmail.com. So that's it. That's it for me. I'll be sure to share my slides. I'm happy to share resources. I can send sanitized versions of the spreadsheets if anyone wants them. And I guess open up for questions.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes, and then I think we have 2 or 3 minutes, I think. Anyone have any last questions? Again, are you going to go over maybe in the trade show area?
Yeah. I'll be around for a bit if anybody.
Follow us over there if you have any more detailed questions. Yeah.
Just a really quick question. Why would a company like P49 be doing things so manually and not have a more integrated system?
That's a good question. An ERP is a pretty big investment. We've focused on growth and capacity, building the restaurant. We've got some big tanks coming in. So it's really just where do you prioritize your investment? Is it in the running of the business? Is it in the growing of the business? Sometimes they tie hand in hand. I think we're probably constrained in how much we can produce because we don't have an ERP. That being said, it's pretty high priority coming up. So we're expecting to implement one in 2018. We haven't made a final decision on which system we're going to go with, but we've done the research. If you have any questions, if you're going through that yourself, I'm more than happy to talk about our experience through that kind of purchasing cycle.
What happens when you go on vacation?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
When you leave the ERP system leaves with you.
So if I'm off on Friday, I do this over the weekend. If I'm on vacation, it doesn't get done. So I try to plan out a couple weeks ahead of time. The schedule goes out a few weeks. If I'm on vacation and things change, we've had challenges in the past when that happens. So I'm going to try to get someone trained up on doing this. I do have a packaging supervisor who's more kind of on the floor, working with the operators. I'm going to try to get to take over this from me. But yeah, that's a great question. It's because it's so manual. I mean, nobody else really has, can spend a day of their week doing this. So if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Folks.